Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here inside TCO Performance Center with none other than Andrew Krammer of the Minnesota Star-Tribune. I am wearing a jacket because I was just outside. Vikings are practicing outside. I don't know if you can see from the cheeks. Pretty cold. Andrew stayed inside because he is very soft, and now the
Yep.
Star-Tribune has 11 beat reporters, so he didn't have to go outside there. But anyway, this is what the weather is going to be like in Chicago for Vikings and Bears. So let's get into our hardcore preview, Andrew. Uh, let's not start in the most obvious place. Let's start with the Bears defense against the Vikings offense. I don't think all problems for the Vikings offense solved last week just because Sam Darnold played better. And the Bears have kind of had Kevin O'Connell's number a little bit since Matt Eberflus took over. Do you think that that is a Eberflus trend, or do you think that that was just maybe those particular matchups? Josh Dobbs played in one of them. Or is it something that they do that handles the Vikings well?
Well, Matt Eberflus has had good defenses. The problem is Ryan Poles has just done everything to take away every good piece he's had. I mean, they bring in some good linebackers and Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards. Those guys have been kind of the straw that stirs the drink there. But I think the Vikings struggles there. They've won 4 straight years in Chicago. So it's more of a grinded out kind of game that we're used to. And I think this year's Bears defense is going to give you more of the same. They are the number one red zone team in football. I think they're number 4 in third downs. They give up big plays, but they don't give up a lot of points. And so this Vikings team is going to have to win the way that they've honestly typically won in these games, which is throwing over the top 47-yarder to Jordan Addison here, 98-yarder to Justin Jefferson there. I don't think nor has this Bears defense allowed many offenses to march down the field on them. And this isn't the way Sam Darnold and the Vikings want to play anyway.
Well, and the Vikings' run game was very underwhelming, to be Minnesota nice about what happened last week. Really, they got killed up front and couldn't run the football at all. And I don't think Chicago has quite the bodies, though. I mean, Tennessee, that was the strength of their entire defense. And while they did slow down the Vikings' running game, they didn't really slow down the Vikings' passing game. It was actually the Vikings who slowed them down more by dropping passes, one of which could have been a long touchdown to Jalen Naylor. But the run game, I don't know that it's going to look as bad as it did against the Titans every week. But in removing Darisaw and Ingram, it is less good at that than it was previously. How do you think that they make that up? Because I don't think Chicago is an unbelievable run defense. Maybe if Keem Hicks came back out of retirement and played for them this weekend. But as long as that doesn't happen, they're just a mediocre. Is it as bad as it looked, or can it be better than that?
I think it can be better because you're not going to face Jeffrey Simmons every single week or Tavondre Sweat. And the Vikings will talk those guys up, but there is truth in that they're probably one of the best tandems in football in terms of defensive tackles. And the Vikings have had to go through that now with these AFC South teams. So can it get better? I don't know. I don't really know because Reisner's the kind of guy who's not going to give you a whole lot in that area. He's going to need to double team to move people. He's not going to single block move people. Problem is, Garrett Bradbury's not either. Blake Brandell's been hit or miss there. Ed Ingram was the muscle they had on the inside, and his inconsistency, especially in pass protection, where when he got beat, it was quickly, it was catastrophic for the play. They eventually got sick of that because it happened so much in that Jags game where a guy who's that far along, 40 plus starts, shouldn't be doing that. So you're going to give up some things though by making this switch. Dalton Reisner is going to be more consistent in pass pro. He's not going to have those big bad beats, but he's also not going to be somebody who's going to open a ton of holes for you. This needs to be Aaron Jones's show. This needs to be somehow Aaron Jones getting healthy. I don't know how that happens without him taking some time off. If they're going to continue to play him 50% at least, he's going to take hits like he took on Sunday, where it's that big hit from the Titans nose tackle. And as he said on Wednesday this week, he's like, I saw that thing coming. I'm like, oh God, no, as he's going to the ground because he's got busted ribs. He's also probably got 19 other injuries we don't know about right now. But to me, it's got to be him making the hay. It's got to be him forcing missed tackles, creating beyond what the blocking is going to do. Cam Robinson's an okay player. We're seeing that he's almost a Dalton Reisner type, where it's pretty consistent pass pro, run game. So to me, Matt, I think they have to work around this offensive line and frankly find a way to get Aaron Jones healthy and running back to where he was earlier in the season.
Well, give me that all day in comparison to bad pass blocking, because bad pass blocking is sacks It's fast sacks, so your quarterback doesn't even have a chance to do a whirly spin move around like Sam Darnold. He seemed pretty proud of that, which I would be too, but also you could have died, man. That's like when you're a kid and you set up like a jump for the bike and you're like, "Mom, watch." And you don't understand, like, why are you getting so upset? I jumped over it. That's what he was like to the press conference. Like, you sure you want to do that? Yeah, it worked out just fine. Okay. But I would much rather have the pass protection because that's going to be the Vikings' offensive ticket. It always was, even as good as Aaron Jones was earlier in the season. And I'm not sure that we factor that in quite enough when evaluating Darnold, that it is a different world when you aren't running the ball with explosive plays and drawing the defense into that. And Cam Akers is a fine player, and they let him down a couple times, big time in that last game. I mean, there was a pitch to the left side where Hockenson and Robinson blocked the same guy, and nobody blocked Arden Key, and he just squishes the running back. There's nothing you could do on stuff like that. And that's a player who's coming back from injury, a player who doesn't play here until halfway through the season. And run game takes a lot of that feel for each other. I don't know about communication, but just feel for, oh yeah, we all know our assignment. We all know how we're going to double team, how we're going to work off. And this offensive line is just not going to have it. So what's the workaround? The screen game has just gone poof into the atmosphere after being really good early in the year. I would like to see that come back. And we keep talking about a short passing game to Jordan Addison. It was there with Hockenson against the Jaguars, but I would like to see that be a focus because they are not going to be able to pound the ball over and over again. And Sammy Darnold might have to throw 40 passes in these games.
Yeah, I don't think there is a workaround. I think it's going to be on Sam. It's going to continue to be on Sam. Few quarterbacks have to do as much as he does in terms of scoring points. If he's not throwing touchdowns, they're generally not scoring them. That doesn't happen everywhere. Joe Burrow is one of the places that it also happens with, but usually it's got to be a pretty top quarterback to be relied on that much. This is a Vikings offense in transition, and it's been, hey, we tried to run the ball. We paid for Aaron Jones, and we still can't. So it's got to be on Sam. It's got to be this pass attack we're talking about that is one of the most talented and the most explosive in football. They have to rely on that. They have to keep going back to the well with Sam. Because when you look at this run game, you can't all of a sudden just say, well, run behind Brian O'Neill every time. It doesn't work that way. This team has tried to run in the middle. They've tried to become a predominant duo interior line or interior run game where they've tried to use these weak offensive linemen in the inside, pair them together and push and try to just give up on the second level at times and say, you know what, Aaron, dodge the linebackers. They're on you. Because that's how infrequently they can get consistent blocks up front with their run game. So it's going to look like that, I think, the rest of the year. It's what you're stuck with. And the workaround is scheme. It's coaches figuring out a way to get the ball to Aaron Jones on the perimeter, whether that's tunnel screens, bubble screens, just flat passes, whatever, just quick things to get the ball out. And then Sam continuing to do what he did in Tennessee, which is make incredible plays in the pocket, buy time, keep his eyes up, looking downfield. That's the stuff that the Vikings love to see.
Hey, he did a great job in the pocket. The scrambles stood out, but there were a few moments where he had to slide away. And I thought it was a great rep from Dalton Reisner when he got pushed right back into Darnold, but he stayed on that Jeffrey Simmons and he held on to him just long enough for Darnold to move around him and make a play. And that's why Reisner's in there and Ed Ingram is not. I don't think that one's all that deep. I feel like there was maybe an attempt for some people to make that into a debate. It was a very easy choice to do that. And I think in the long run, it will benefit them a ton, even if there is this drawback. But also when your right guard ranked previously 48th out of 60 or something in run blocking, he wasn't doing well in run blocking either. And they couldn't get, 4th and 1s or 3rd and 1s behind him either before Reisner came out. That is a weakness, and they have to find a way around it. It doesn't seem like they want CJ Ham to be that weakness necessarily and try to plow him forward. Doesn't look like Josh Oliver's going to play in this game, or at least it's very suspect that he might. We just came back. Some of us just came back for practice. The real grinders.
I'm so warm and cozy in here. It's nice.
And so it was windy. But
lake effect.
CJ Ham is just not that guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's just not Sam Gash. He is the modern fullback.
Cash.
He's not Lorenzo Neal. He's not this
Mike
battering ram.
Allstott.
Right. Yeah. He's not quite the battering ram classic lead fullback. So, and if they don't have Oliver on the outside, there really isn't a great option for this other than to try to get the ball out of Darnold's hands quickly. Like you said, run some types of screens. On the other side of it, someone sent me a tweet or a blue sky message.
A post.
They got to come up with something there.
Let's just call them tweets. Let's just take it back.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah. A tweet on that other thing that's supposed to be less crazy, but I've still got crazy notes from it. And someone was asking about the over-under for Caleb Williams sacks. Do you think that Brian Flores' defense will lay waste to the rookie quarterback?
Friends, gifting is hard, but here's a hint. Give the gift of connection from US Cellular. Not sure what that means? Here's a slightly more specific hint. You could choose 4 free phones and get 4 lines for $90 a month from US Cellular. Your family wants new phones? How do we know? They told us. The good news is that compared to wrapping presents, you're great at taking hints. So take a hint and get 4 free phones and 4 lines for $90 a month. US Cellular, built for us. Ready to kick off some extra fun on football Sundays? Grab Catan and keep the action going off the field. While Minnesota's football teams are crushing it, you and your crew can build, trade, and outsmart each other in the ultimate game of strategy. Whether it's during halftime or between big plays, Catan brings a whole new level of competition and excitement to your game day. Visit CatanShop.com and use the coupon code PURPLE to get a 10% discount off Catan for a limited time. Again, CatanShop.com, coupon code PURPLE to get a 10% discount on Catan for a limited time only.
I do think he's got a great shot at it because the Bears, they rode the Caleb Williams experience last week at their first game under their new play caller. They tried to do some simple things, get him in rhythm. Yet when he got them back into that game at the end or tried to, it was back-to-back sacks in the fourth quarter against the Packers. And then he all of a sudden whips out 3 completions for 49 yards, gets him into field goal range, and then that kick gets blocked. So it's just the up and down nature that we're going to see from a young quarterback. And I think against Brian Flores' defense, that's going to be no different. Find a young quarterback the last year and a half, even with the personnel they had last year, who's done well against them. They just can't. They win. The Vikings win the battle before the snap so frequently against these young quarterbacks. And I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be any different, especially in an offense that's trying to find its simplicity. It's trying to find its rhythm. That means it's not going to have generally a ton of answers built in, or a quarterback who's ready to adjust to those said answers. So I think the Vikings are going to win just by trying to out-athlete these guys. They're going to say, you know what, Jonathan Grenard's going to beat these guys off the edge. We don't need to go deep in our bag. Let's just play straight up for a lot of this, maybe confuse them a little bit on third down. They're not going to need a whole lot. I do think this is going to be a dominant effort for the Vikings, especially if they get them into obvious pass situations where Caleb Williams has taken a lot of sacks.
And the fact that DeAndre Swift is banged up, not sure if he's going to play. That would mean Roschon Johnson, who is their backup. And
he's a nice player, but he's not Swift.
Right. Swift has been a real problem for the Vikings. And at very least, he's going to be limited in what he can do if he can play in this game. The Vikings have been an amazing run defense. Yeah. And the gentlemen that deserve some credit that don't get a lot of talk about them and their role this year is the interior defensive linemen. Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, and Jerry Tillery. Tillery has done a great job at just solidifying the group. They had no one last year that they really trusted to go in there, and they were putting a lot on the plate of Bullard and a ton on Harrison Phillips. Now they can rotate a little bit more. They haven't been on the field as much more, and I think there's a correlation there with those big guys not being on the field as much. But the fact that they put Will Levis when he has a good running back, but they made him into situations where he just had to throw and throw and throw. If they do that to Caleb Williams, I think it's problematic for him. He has 10 sacks that have been attributed just to him this year. And the rest of them seem to be attributed to their left tackle, who we might see Grenard line up over a lot there. With Caleb Williams, though, there's one thing that scares you a little bit about it is, well, he will take those sacks. He can also do things that are downright spectacular, and this is not a group of corners and DBs that can stick on people for 3-4 seconds.
Yeah, we've seen this movie before. It was C.J. Stroud coming to U.S. Bank Stadium, a better quarterback with better, well, equal weapons, I guess, because Nico Collins was still healthy at that point. We saw this. The Vikings knew going into it, we need to keep him in the pocket when this guy gets out, especially rolling to his right. He's dangerous. So if the Vikings going into this game presumably want to take that away, I think they can do it. I think they're pretty set up to do it. And also, the good thing is that the Bears went into last week trying to get Caleb going on the ground. He had 10 carries for 70 plus yards. 4 of those were designed runs, zone reads. 6 of them were scrambles. The Vikings crushed Will Levis in the zone read. They tried to bring that out. Tennessee did. It went nowhere. I think it was 5 runs for 6 yards or something like that. The Vikings read it every time. Van Ginkel, Grenard, even Pat Jones. There was no fooling those guys. They every time could step up and take it out. So if the Bears go to that, the designed run for Caleb, I don't think Flores has anything to be worried about. It is the off script plays that you're talking about. It's the if they drop back on 3rd and 10, we think we can get a normal 4-man rush on him and he somehow breaks contain. This guy's really capable at throwing on the run, CJ Stroud like, at finding guys downfield. It's hit or miss. It's inconsistent because of how young he is and the decision making still coming along. But if the Vikings have to worry about any kind of explosive element with this team, it is that. It is you got to keep contain on him because he's got a Kyler Murray style ability to get out and make plays.
I ran across a stat. I want you to tell me what you think of it. So Byron Murphy and Stephon Gilmore, this is according to PFF, are in the bottom 10 as far as man coverage this year, that they have barely played man coverage at all this entire season. However, the top of the league in terms of actually using man coverage, there's only like 4 guys who have played man coverage more than half of the time. It has really turned into a zone coverage league. So did we or have we focused too much on that part of it? Because I know they said they wanted to play more man, and they do with Shaq Griffin a little bit, but I don't know that we need to be as concerned about that as we've talked about. Or do you think we should be?
No, I think Brian Flores in this perfect world wants a 25-year-old Stephon Gilmore who can do that. Like, yes, I still think ideally you do that. But I was talking to Cam Bynum about this not too long ago because he was calling back the time last year when they asked him to play corner. And he was saying, look, we were down so bad they had me doing it, and none of us want me doing that. And that's why we brought in Gilmore and Shaq Griffin and all that. But he had mentioned the wide receivers that are out there in today's game, so few people can play man-to-man reliably against, excuse me, against these guys. This is an NFL and a league that is just producing AJ Browns every week. Every year. It seems like in the draft class, you're getting Malik Neighbors one year. You're getting Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in the same class coming out. These guys are coming in trained to more produce right away in these passing attacks with these quarterbacks and head coaches. They're more inclined to get them going right away. And they're freaking aliens that are coming out doing this stuff. I think that's why you're seeing the proliferation of zone. You're seeing the proliferation of too high, quote unquote, shell coverage. That's just a nice word for saying they want to put an entire blanket over the top of what you're doing. Zone is the only way to do that. And I think you're seeing teams try to counteract the athleticism of offenses by playing all that zone. Flores knows this. But you know, a guy as aggressive as Brian says, you know what? I don't want my guys to cover for 5 seconds anyway. We're going to apply so much pressure that in a perfect world, I think he still does want to play more man. I don't know this, but my guess based on his experience, based on where he's been and what he's done and what he's had the most success with, especially in Miami, was playing a lot of man coverage with really good corners. And I think he's making do with what the league demands right now, but also with what he's got in the cupboard.
Oh, the other thing about playing man is that we've seen a massive increase in pre-snap motion in the NFL over the last couple years because everybody found out that when McVay was doing it, it was a hack and that the numbers increased when there was motion before the play. And so every offense went, okay, we're going to use that. And if you try to play man on that, you're running across the whole formation with that wide receiver. They can get behind people. They can run mesh stuff on you. And it just is really tricky. So I think you have to play back in your zones most of the time. I guess that stat to me felt like we probably make too much of this. However, you would like to have somebody that if you need to stick them on a guy one-on-one, shut him down, it's 3rd down and long. We need you on the outside, or we need to play a single high for this type of blitz or whatever. I also think too that the defense that blitzes like this, and this goes for all of history of the NFL, will sometimes give up a big play. And sometimes you'll be like, what the heck happened there? And a 98-yarder really stands out in particular. but there's a couple more even from that game where you go, man, that guy was really wide open. That's what happens when you do this. The trade-off is they're top in turnovers, they're top in pressures, they're top in sacks. And what you're betting on is you might get a couple of big plays off this, or you might find the middle of the field as they did with the Lions on a longer drive. But we're going to hit you with a negative play eventually. It's very similar to how Kevin O'Connell views offense, where I'm going to hunt explosives, as he says, and sometimes that's going to result in interceptions. And a lot of times it's going to result in big plays. And that's just how Flores is doing it. All of this is to ask you if you think that the last couple of games mean anything to the evaluation of this defense. They played bad quarterbacks, bad coaches in some instances, not the type of weapons they're going to play down the stretch here. Is it a great defense again, or is it a mid defense where the truth is somewhere in the middle? Is it the defense that played against the Rams? Like, what are we supposed to think?
Yeah, I think this is a really, really good defense that with another year of talent infusion could be great. I think that's where they're at. I think their talent level is still at the point where it's not all-time great. It's not top 5 currently in the NFL great, I don't think, but they have the capability to be that given the scheme that they've got, the intelligence that they've got on the field, and their ability to morph into really whatever you need them on a given Sunday. That's their strength. When you put the Detroit Lions offense out there, that's just overwhelming. I'm trying to think of other examples. I think even Green Bay, when they get rolling the way they can with a healthy Jordan Love, there are going to be times where you just don't have the talent against some of the better offensive lines in football. Because we talk about Tillery, we talk about Harrison Phillips. These guys have been so steady and exactly what you wanted them to be. They're not making a Pro Bowl. They're not ranking up there in pressures or sacks. There's still going to be lapses and things you give up on this defense based on what you're working with. And we talk about the man coverage, the elder secondary. If you can make Stephon Gilmore tackle, if you can make Harrison Smith run and tackle, that's how you beat them. And I think that's why it's the Green Bay and Detroit matchups are the ones you got to worry about if you're the Vikings, because they know you the best and they're built to beat you. Especially when I think of Detroit, we know protection, throw over the middle, but Green Bay is such a good horizontal run game team. Matt LaFleur is such a deep bag of just knowing how to get the ball out to Jaden Reed on the perimeter, Christian Watson here, Josh Jacobs there. It's just such an impressive and voluminous offense that they have. That's where I think that this Vikings defense is going to get tested. But can we learn anything? Yeah, we know that they've cemented their place as a top 10 probably defense in the league this year. And now this last month is going to tell us whether they're top 5 or not.
Right. Presently, if we look at the numbers, they're the best defense in the NFL, but that's after playing 3 of the worst offenses. And if it had been Anthony Richardson, maybe it might have been a little trickier, but Joe Flacco went out there and couldn't get them inside the 20-yard line and just struggled and is 1,000 years old.
Yep.
And then, I mean, even Levis had some moments, or I thought he played pretty well considering this defense. And so we need to see, it's just been so long. And as we try to make any evaluation for anything, it's been so long since they've played a good team, and they're not really playing a good team this week. But it's also not as bad as the last 3 teams.
No.
And that's where let's go into the who's going to win. Let's move the safeties like O'Connell does his press conferences. But let's go into who's going to win. It's Soldier Field. I remember saying once upon a time I would never pick the Vikings at Soldier Field just because of history, but they've won a bunch of times there. They should still win this game, but I don't think that it's going to be okay. All right. Well, the Titans sort of scored that crazy touchdown, but we never thought they were going to lose. I think this one could be a little bit more grip the edge of your seat.
Yeah, this could have more of a Jacksonville type feel unless Caleb Williams gives it away. That's the thing. It's like Will Levis had that power in his hands all last Sunday to give it away. He didn't. Now Harrison Smith dropped an early pick. He said he wanted 2 of them in that game, but Williams is that the ball rests in his court. If he doesn't take a ton of sacks, if he plays smart football, keeps the score, his defense keeps the score relatively low, they can absolutely be in this game. Vikings fans should rightfully be worried that you've kind of got the dead coordinator bounce. You've got the new coordinator coming in, second game. Feels like they kind of found a little bit of a rhythm. Brian Flores said this week, he told us they ran the ball well, they controlled the clock. I assume they're going to stick with the same formula on Sunday. So DeAndre Swift's health is huge in this one. If he's healthy, that is going to be not good, obviously, for the Vikings. He went for nearly 200 yards last time they faced each other in Philadelphia. This isn't the same offense in Chicago, but if they don't have him and it's just Roshan Johnson back there, I think the Vikings could easily then key off on Caleb Williams, and it could be a long day for him. So to me, it's about that Chicago running game. I think the Vikings win. I think it's going to be another close, grinded out kind of game that has Vikings fans saying, God, we just want to win a comfortable game. Can we just do that once?
And when we talk about the rest of the schedule, because the real tests are coming as far as offenses go, I have a ton of respect. Drew Petzing, who is the offensive coordinator for Arizona, has done an amazing job there, I think, with Kyler Murray, former Viking wide receivers coach under Stefanski.
Yep.
And then you have Kirk and his bunch of weapons. And then you have Geno Smith and then the Jordan. Like, there's a lot of good quarterbacks to come. I feel like they kind of need this one, and I don't mean need it to make the playoffs, but there's a new bar, and the bar is not just make the playoffs. The new bar is press Detroit. If you can't get there, at least end up with that 5 seed. So you get the easiest matchup of all the teams that win their divisions, which very well may be Atlanta.
Yeah.
But if you're going to Atlanta in the first round of the playoffs with a much better record than them, you're feeling pretty good. That's where they're trying to go here. If you lose this one, it becomes a little more dicey, even though there's a lot of home games, just based on the caliber of quarterback that you're going to face going forward.
Yeah, this is all about trajectory and vibes and style points, right? The Vikings are 8-2, but if we go along the course of their season, they bottom out with 2 losses in 5 days, and they've kind of tried to climb their way out of it. That Colts game you didn't feel great about, Jags game you certainly didn't feel great about. Tennessee was a step in the right direction. Chicago, toward this tough part of their schedule, can be a further step in the right direction. If you continue that upward trajectory of, say, if you walk out of this game and say Sam Darnold played pretty good, we still feel good about the direction we're headed, then yeah, that's the vibes that you're carrying into that tough portion you're talking about, Arizona, Atlanta, right into the final quarter of their season. So for me, this is going to be about Sam Darnold keeping the consistency going. If he has another bad game, and we're talking about a great Titans game sandwiched between 2 bad Darnold games, you're not going to feel great about looking at the rest of your schedule. You're going to think, oh boy, Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, Kyler Murray coming into town. Yes, it's at home. Yes, we like our defense, but if you got to trust Sam to put up more than 20 points, which he hasn't done in a minute, that is going to be the part that you're not going to feel good about. So it's all about Sam. It's all about that consistency and just feeling that you're headed in the right direction.
For this one, based on the weather, where you're playing, who you're playing against, if Sam Darnold plays ugly and they win, this is much more one where I'll go, okay, whatever, man. Like, the Jaguars game was hard to pick apart because they were so good in the middle of the field and so bad in the red zone. And those interceptions were just nightmares for anyone who's thinking about, oh, what's he going to do in the playoffs? Is he going to throw 3 picks and all that sort of thing? But if he has a tough day and they squeak it out, then you just have to survive Soldier Field. Speaking of which, before we wrap up here, what is your favorite Vikings and Bears at Soldier Field type of moment?
Wow, there's a lot to choose from. There's a lot, and I could just go off of my own experience covering games there. It started in 2013 with the year that was Les Frazier's final year. They blew some record at the time. It was a record like 7 games in the last minute. Like, if games had been 59 minutes long, they would have 7 more wins that season. And they were 5-10-1 that year, I think. They go there in week 2, and that was when they lose in the final minute again. And Alan Williams was the defensive coordinator. And I remember that locker room was so tense because Jay Cutler threw a bomb. I think it was to Martellus Bennett or one of the monsters they had, Alshon Jeffrey or Brandon Marshall. They had so many giant guys there, but that locker room was so tense afterward, and everybody just hated the final play call, what had happened there. That was a bad memory for Vikings fans. The one, though, that's probably my favorite is the Teddy Bridgewater. Boy, was it 2015? I think it might have been his second year. He's driving down the field. He has a chance to win this game, young Teddy Bridgewater, to bring his Vikings team back in a season they won the division. And the clocks go out. They just go dark. And all of a sudden, he has no idea. We're trying to figure out, we're tracking this thing on NFL.com, trying to figure out how much time is left in this game. We have no idea. And Teddy, when there was actually 40 seconds left, lobs this ball up thinking he has no time left, throws a pick, gives the game away. It ruins any chance that they had of coming back. And afterward, the clock operator had to issue a statement. There had to be a pull report with the clock operator to be like, we're sorry, Teddy, and that's all they could do. So when we talk about House of Horrors stuff, like they lost 16 of 19 games between 2001 and 2019 in Chicago. They went 3-16 in those nearly 20 years, and it was crap like that consistently happens. So the fact that they've won 4 straight games there now makes all that just a distant memory. What about you? What's your favorite?
You know what you just said, right?
What?
You just said, though they won these games in a row, so now it's a distant
It
memory.
makes it feel like it, I said. It doesn't mean that it won't be. It
That's
doesn't mean that it's not gonna come crawling back like some zombie that you're just stomping on its head.
that was very close under the same category as like this kicker's been nails this year.
What could go wrong?
So I shouldn't say favorite because it was, but just craziest is 2016, hands down. We showed up in Chicago thinking, okay, this is going to blow this team out. The Vikings were
I forgot about that one. Yeah.
a one-loss team,
Yeah.
and Zimmer had been ripping the heads off of stuffed animals the week before. And so it was a little uncomfortable, but they were 1-6. And they come out and have I believe it was a 69-yard run on the first or second play from scrimmage by Jordan Howard, who was one of those Viking killers.
Yep.
And right from there, everyone looked around and went, what is going on? That was when Norv Turner took back the reins from Pat Shurmur, and they were running deep dropbacks with TJ Clemens giving out pressures constantly. Zimmer's eyes popping out. Norv quits after the game. That was insane.
I remember Jaron Kearse got benched on that Jordan Howard run. He got a start, his only start ever next to Harrison Smith. If you go back and look it up, it's true. And he gets benched 3 plays into it because of that 69-yard touchdown run. Yeah, that was a wild game. I forgot about that. And then, we come back here to Winter Park, and Norv quits like on the Tuesday. It was like a couple days after the fact. And then we find out Zim's also got a giant red swollen eye and needs surgery, one of 8 surgeries he would go under, I think, on that eye.
And Zimmer tearing up at the podium, talking about how he's friends with Norv. And then we never really got the full story about that whole thing. And Chicago, man, hold on to your butts.
We do know that they have not spoken. So, as of Mark Craig talked to Norv like 4 or 5 years ago, and they still hadn't spoken 5 years later.
Yeah, I asked Mike one time. I was like, Mike, do you want to tell us what happened with Norv? This is like a couple years after. And he said, well, I'll have it in my book. I'll read it.
Yeah, I will too. Yeah,
I'll write it if he wants to. But I think Mark is going to be the exclusive writer there.
He seems to be his pen pal. Yeah,
the number of shots he would take at people in a book would be astounding. Anyway, well, we'll see. You never do know what is going to happen in Chicago this time. So we'll be there as always. Thank you, Andrew, for all of your time.
Football.
We'll catch y'all later. Football.